Good morning. It's Katrina from the Alluring Bead Boutique. Welcome back. Today I'm going to continue on with talking about herringbone and perfecting some of the different techniques involved in using herringbone stitch. I did already the basic tutorial on flat herringbone, and then I did a tutorial on creating patterns using herringbone stitch, and I went ahead and completed this little bracelet here from the last tutorial I did that showed you guys how to make these little sections. And then I stitched it together also using herringbone and embellished the ends and put a little clasp on. I do have a pattern for this available at the alluringbeadboutique.com if you'd like to have a pattern, because I think it came out really pretty and unique looking. It's called the Modern Chic pattern if you're interested. All right, here's just another example of a pattern you can create in just straight up flat herringbone. I started out with ladder stitch, just like on the previous videos. And then I just did my 2-bead ladder. I did two columns of red, 2 columns of the gold, 2 of the purple, and 2 of this beautiful rainbow blue here on the end. And then I just did my stitches in herringbone in the corresponding colors on the ladder base. Now here's another flat herringbone project where I did these little inclusions. So I started my base out with 6 beads across so that I could do 3 rows of ladder stitch. And then I did what they call an inclusion by adding this little bronze bead in between the columns every so often. And then my base here, when I connected it, I just did a straight up ladder stitch with these three sets of 3 bronze beads here. So that's some flat. Now I'm going to move on. So I'm going to talk about this other flat stitch you can do with herringbone, and it's actually called circular, which is not tubular. This would be tubular, where you're actually creating a tube. This is another piece of tubular that was just 4 beads wide on the base. This is what's called circular. So you start out with a little circle of beads tied into a circle. And then you create your herringbone stitch along those base beads. And then, of course, to reach over, you have to include other beads. To get from column to column, you're adding beads in between. And I think that's the one I'm going to do today. So I'll be moving on to this in just a few minutes. But this is circular, but this one here is also circular. And I'm going to get a little Sharpie pen so I can show you better. Now this I actually did off of one of Kelly Dale's videos on Off the Beaded Path channel. And this is also a circular, but she only used the 6 beads at the base and have 3 columns of herringbone. And so the way you do your increase on these beads here in between the columns, you start out with 1 and then you move up to 2 and so forth, and it creates this cone shape. And this was for a bead cap or an end cap for a bracelet. And it's really neat. I did this a long time ago when I was first learning how to bead. It's not a really pretty example, but it's a good example. And I keep it in my little baggie of tryout stuff so I can refer back to it. And so it worked out great, so I have it today to refer back to. And then here is tubular. So this would be where you make your ladder stitch base and you tie it into a circle before you start your herringbone stitch. Now this particular one is twisted tubular. And this one, like I said, is just straight tubular, regular tubular herringbone. I just did only 4 beads on my base, so it made this, it's really firm. Where this one has some, you know, a bigger center, it can flatten out like this. And this one, because it's only 4 beads wide, it's really firm. It really doesn't flatten because the beads are all butted up against each other. Now this is what they call chenille stitch, But basically, it is just a variation on tubular herringbone stitch. So here you can see at the base, I did my base beads in ladder. I did a couple of rows of tubular herringbone. Then I went into chenille stitch here for a couple of rows. And then I finished off by going back to regular tubular herringbone in ladder, stitch my beads together on the end. And so that's just a cute little beaded bead. Another piece that I just keep around in my little pile over here to refer back to. Let's talk about this one today. So I just used all 11 beads on this. And I used some really pretty opaque red ones here. And then these dark beige Toho C beads. And some, here's the beads that I have. These ones are opaque lustered dark beige. And then the other ones, I had to grab my other bag, are Duracoat opaque dyed light maroon, just right 11's. And I've got some .006 fire line in white, and I've got a size 11 beading needle, and I'm already threaded on. Obviously, I'm still connected to this piece. So let's go ahead and get some beads out, and I'll show you guys how to do this circular flat herringbone. Alright, so here I am, and I've come back. I've just went ahead and dumped out a little bit of each of my colors of beads. And I cut my working thread off of this piece, but I left a nice long thread in case I want to go back and keep this piece for a project. What I was playing around with earlier was the concept of maybe using this for the back of a Rivoli bezel, because that would be beautiful. It would cover up all the foil back. But that's something to think about later on. So the first thing I'm going to do is I've got my needle threaded onto my fire line. So I'm going to go ahead and pick up, I'm going to mirror this piece. So this one has 4 columns of herringbone. So I need 8 beads on my base. So I'm picking up 8 of my red. And I'm going to carry them down to my, down to the bottom of my thread. I'm going to pass back through all of the beads. My needle's a little bent, but I'm just going to go ahead and work with it. I'm passing through all of my beads, and if you can't get through them all at one time, don't worry about it. Once you come all the way through, your work's going to look like this. Then I'm just going to go ahead and tie 2 overhand knots. When I tie that second one, I'm going to make sure that it falls down between the same 2 seed beads right there that my threads were exiting from. I'll pull it nice and tight. Then I'm just going to take my needle and pass through a couple of beads. And so there's where I have to start. So now I can go ahead and start. I'm going to build my 4 columns of herringbone. So just like regular flat herringbone, I'm going to pick up 2. I'm exiting from this bead. I'm going to pass through the next bead plus 1 more. So I'm actually going to move through 2 beads. And I'm going to pull my beads into shape the best that I can for this first round, to where they sit looking like herringbone in that little inverted V. So because I moved through the 2 beads, I'm ready for my next stitch. So I'm going to pick up 2. I am exiting from that bead right there. I'm going to go into the next bead plus 1 more. Pull my beads and finagle them around so that they look like herringbone in the little inverted V. And repeat that 2 more times. Pick up my 2, moving through 2, positioning my beads. Then I have to do 1 more, so I'm going to pick up these 2. And this time, when I'm exiting here, I'm going to push through the 2 beads plus that very first herringbone stitch that I completed. So that's how I'm going to step up. So I'm going to go through those 3 beads, and then I'll be stepped up and coming out of my very first herringbone column. And it might take a little work to get your beads to pop in and look really good, but they'll come together better as we move on to the next step. But this is what I have so far. And you'll see here where my thread is exiting the top of that very first stitch of herringbone I took at the beginning of this round. So now I'm ready for my next stitch. So this is going to be the next row of herringbone. So I'm going to pick up 2. This time I'm just going to pass down the next bead. Just like that. So I'm going down 1. And see how nicely that sits like herringbone. And now I need to move over to my next herringbone column. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick up one of my beige beads. And I'm exiting here from the second bead down on this column. Now I'm going to pick up my 111 and I'm going to go up through just that top bead, the first herringbone row, right there. Not the base row. And when I pull, that bead sits in between, just like that, so I don't have any exposed thread. So now I'm ready for the next stitch. Pick up my 2, come down through just that herringbone row bead, not the base bead. Alright, so now I have to pick up my accent bead, and I'm going to step up just in through that 1 bead on the next column. And I'm going to repeat that for the next 2 columns. I'm going to pick up my 2, go down through the 1 bead, I'm going to pick up my accent bead, which is beige. I'm going to pass up through just that 1 bead on my last column. So now I'm going to put my last herringbone stitch for this row. So I got my 2 on my needle. I'm going to come down through 1. I'm going to pick up my accent bead. But so now, instead of going up just 1, I have to go up the 1 from my previous row, and I have to step up into the row I just created. So we're going to step up through those 2 on that very first column and pull our little accent bead into position so that this is what we have, and our work is still nice and flat. So now we're ready for our next row. Let's continue on. We're going to pick up 2 and go down 1, just like regular flat herringbone. So now I've got a little bit farther to get to bridge this gap to this next column. So I'm going to pick up 2 of my beige beads, and then I'm going to step up through just that 1 bead of the previous row. And this is what my work looks like. Now you see that there's a little bit of thread showing right here, but really by the time I complete the next round, like I did on this one, you won't be able to see that. You could potentially have added another bead there if you so choose. That is a design choice that you will make when you're doing your own designing. So let's go ahead. I'm going to pick up my next 2. I'm exiting from the top of that bead on that herringbone column. I'm going to go down 1, position my beads. I'm going to pick up 2 more of my accent beads and come up 1 on my next column. And as I'm doing this, I'm going to use my thumb and my finger here to keep my work nice and flat. Because I have that little bit of a gap, if I'm pull tight, it's going to pull it up into a cup shape. And I don't want that. I want this piece to look nice and flat for now. So now I'm ready for my next stitch. So I'm going to pick up 2. I'm going to go down 1. I'm going to pick up my 2 accent. And I'm going to step up 1. Because I'm still on the same, working on my same row here. Holding my work flat, I'm going to pick up my last 2 red. I'm on the last column here. Go down 1. Pick up my 2 accent beads. And now I'm at the end of the row and I'm stepping back up into my very first column here. So once again, I have to step up through 2 beads. So I can complete my stitch, and I'm actually stepping up into this new row at the same time. And when I pull, this is what I have. So now I'm going to do another row of herringbone. So I'm picking up my 2 red, going down the next bead of my column. And this, to mimic what I did on this one, now I'm going to come over into one of my accent beads, just like that. And I'm going to put a red bead. So I'm picking up a red bead, and I'm going to go over through that accent bead from the previous row. I'm going to step on up into the herringbone of that next column, so I can add my next herringbone stitch. And this is what it looks like. So it's time for my next stitch. So I'm picking up 2. I'm going to come down 1. I'm going to go ahead and get into that next accent bead without adding anything yet. I'm going to pick up one of my red beads and go through that next beige bead and step on up into that next column of herringbone. Got 2 more columns to work on, so I'm going to pick up my 2 red beads and pass down 1 to build onto that column right there. I want to step over into the accent bead from my previous row. Pick up a little red bead, and I'm going to go ahead and pass through that next beige bead from the previous row and step on up into my column. So now I have to do this last column. So picking up my 2 red beads, coming down the 1 bead, going to step over into my beige bead. Then I pick up that little red accent bead, and I'm going to pass through the next beige bead. And this time I have to go up through 1 from the previous row and step up also through the new one from the row I just added. So I'm going to have to step up through the beige bead to add my accent bead plus my 2 on the column. And there's what I have. So now let me take a look here and double check my math. So this is the last row that I'm going to do to make this be identical. So I'm ready to do a herringbone stitch. So I pick up my 2 red, and I'm going to come down 1 bead just like normal. Now I'm going to pick up 2 of my beige beads, and I'm going to come through that little red accent bead that I added in the previous row. And then I'm going to pick up 2 more of my little beige beads, and I'm going to step up into my next column, just the top bead. And then I'm going to repeat that for this round. So I'm going to pick up my 2 red beads and take my herringbone stitch on my column. I'm going to pick up 2 beige beads, and I'm going to go through the little red accent bead of my previous row. Pick up 2 more, and I'm going to step up into my next column through the top bead. Alright, so I'm ready for the next column to add my beads. So pick up 2 and go down 1. Now for my accent, I'm picking up 2 and going through that red accent bead I added on the last row. I'm going to pick up 2 more and step up into my 4th column through the top bead. And now we're almost done. So now we're going to add our last 2 beads to this 4th herringbone column. So pick up 2 and come down the 1. And position your beads. Pick up your 2 beige beads and go through the red accent bead. And this time when you add your last 2 accent beads, because we're all the way back around our beadwork, we have to step up through the previous row and our newest row that we're just now finishing. So we're going to step up through 2 red beads, so that we're at the top of the column. And we could potentially keep going and adding more beads in between our columns to keep this work nice and flat. Now if you'll notice on this piece, I did put a tip bead onto each one of my columns. So I'll just show you how to do that real quick. I could have picked up on each of my last stitches and added that bead then, but because I didn't, I'm just going to show you how to do it. So if you want to add the tip bead, just pick up the beige, and you're going to go down 2 beads on that column, because now we're going to follow our thread path, and we don't want any exposed threads. So now we can safely move into all of these little accent beads here in the middle, which is the 2 beige, the red accent, and the other 2 beige. And when we come across, we're going to have to step up through 2 beads to follow the thread path. And now we can add the accent bead on this column. So I'm picking up a beige, and I'm going to come down 2. Then I'm going to move through all 5 of the accent beads. And if I can dig into that red one, like that. And you can flip your work over to make sure that you're hitting all the beads. And then I have to step up through 2 on this column to follow my thread path. We'll go ahead and finish that up. I'm going to pick up my tip bead, and I'm going to come down 2 on my column. I'm going to move through all of the 5 accent beads on my way over to my next column. And now I'm on the last column, but I still need to step up through 2 red ones there on that 4th column. Pick up my last tip bead. I'm going to come down through 2. And then I'm just going to move over through these beads, all 5 beads here of my accent beads. Make sure that your tail thread or your thread doesn't get hung up on your beadwork right there. Now we step up through the 2 again here on this very first column. And get my needle in there. And now I could step up into my tip bead. So there's just a cute little piece of circular. I'm going to cut the tail thread off. That's circular flat work. But they're really cute. And like I said, I would think they would really look great on the back of a beaded bezel. So I went over and grabbed a couple of my little 14 millimeter Rivolis out. And I was just going to show you like the concept, how we could carry on and bring this beadwork using these tip beads up to create the front side of a bezel. And then on the back side, you would have this gorgeous pattern. And I may go ahead and do a pattern or a project with these. I think they're really beautiful. I don't really have any really great matching colors of Rivolis, but, Swarovski is so beautiful, you could probably use any color and it wouldn't matter. All right, guys, so that is it on the flat herringbone for now. Like I said, if you want to see how to make a bead cap using this same technique, Kelly Dale's video is really awesome. I'm not going to try to do one of those right now. So what you guys can do is head on over there and check out her video. I'm not sure of the title of it, but if you message her on Facebook, I'm sure she would tell you if you can't find it. And then for our next video that I'm going to do, we're going to head on into tubular herringbone and then some twisted tubular herringbone. And that'll wrap up my where I want to go with these Mastering Your Technique videos for herringbone for now. Anyhow, so that's it for now. I've got a couple of patterns that are available now. New ones. That's going to be this particular bracelet here for the flat herringbone. And then the one that I promised you guys back around the holidays, which is part of where I showed you guys how to make the bracelet ends and the Marrakesh earrings. So I've got the Marrakesh bracelet pattern available on the website too. So head on over there. And if you're not subscribed to the Bead Mat newsletter and blog, please go ahead and do so. Got a lot of great changes coming this year to the website, to YouTube, and some other things that I'm working on as far as my little business goes. So make sure you get subscribed, folks, so you can follow along. All right, guys. Oh, one last thing I wanted to bring up about my watch time hours. So I started out needing 1,105 when YouTube announced the big change, and I'm down to only needing 672 now. So you guys are doing great. I mean, I've got till February 20th to get these last 672 hours of watch time on my channel. So guys, please keep helping me out. I really appreciate so much how much effort you guys are putting into helping me. It's just fantastic. All right. Thanks, you guys, for watching today, and have a great day, and I'll see you soon.